Hello, everyone. I'm Sudeep Charles, and I head product marketing for Chef Desktop. With me today are Chaitra, who leads the product management function for this product, and we also have Rishi from our engineering team. Right, so that's the lineup. And over the next hour or so, we'll cover an overview of how you can manage your endpoint compliance by codifying your fleet. We'll see how that paradigm can be orchestrated with Chef Desktop, and of course, what are the benefits that you can derive from all of that. But before we start, we have an ask, right? We're actively engaging our customers and those of you that are on this webinar in terms of how you use this kind of software to manage endpoints across different operating systems. And we'd definitely like to speak with you around your use case individually, right? So you'll see a link that drops in your chat interface. Do feel free to use that link to block about 30 minutes of your time for a conversation with us on how you use endpoint automation over an MDM, for example, right? And that would be an interesting one. It will be mutually beneficial as well. So with that said, let's get to it into today's topic. Well, why endpoint management, right? There's a combination of reasons, but essentially, you'll find that most companies really are taking a lot more time to complete compliance audits, right? This is typically something that happens frequently. It's, for a lack of a better word, painful, and it has to happen because if you're not compliant, then there are business risks as well. Significant number of companies, 73% of businesses actually reveal some sort of a vulnerability at least once a year, right? Gives you a sense of why endpoint management becomes that much more important. And about 60% of companies have over 500 accounts with non-expiring passwords. That's, of course, in contravention to most endpoint management paradigms, right? You definitely want to have passwords that expire a lot sooner periodically, right? And endpoint management therefore becomes more of an imperative in such cases. Add to that about the fact 17% of most of these company files are accessible to all employees, and there is really no graded access or no graded or gradient in terms of security as well. And add to that there are a bunch of spends that are increasing for compliance and endpoint management. So endpoint management, all said and done, is a critical part of our compliance posture. And to help you do that, you need some kind of an automation or an automated tool that helps you do a lot of this at scale, quickly, and painlessly. Now, challenges are many, but what you see on the screen are an enumeration of few, right? So when it comes to endpoint or device compliance, the IT teams typically work off checklists. But there are so many devices and there are different configurations. Just picking the right checklist, making sure that you're trying to do the right set of things for that device is in itself a challenge. Now, these teams also rely on manual compliance proofs. Those are again error prone as well. And more the error, more chances of your final audit not really going through. Manually managing these devices takes a lot of time, right? So one, we've established that endpoint management is critical to a business. Two, there are a bunch of challenges, which I'm literally preaching to the choir here, are difficult to deal with, but need to be addressed. But let's just keep that aside for a minute and talk a little bit about compliance as code, right? And what is this, right? So the codification of your compliance controls to essentially automate their adherence, their application and remediation is what we call compliance as code. This includes, the tools and practices that, enable you to incorporate really three critical compliance activities. So one, you are able to prevent any non-compliance by automatically, asserting planned changes that are compliant. You can detect non-compliance through automated estate scanning. And of course, notify stakeholders, when there is, a non-compliant infrastructure that is identified. And of course, you can remediate any kind of non-compliance by, making immediate changes to the infra and ensure that there's a maximum level of adherence and compliance at scale. So this is typically the crux of what we call as compliance as code, and how we envision it in software. But how does it help? Well, I think it's evident. It aims to simplify the management of endpoint devices. It's easier to perform status checks of your endpoint devices, and aggregate them on a compliance dashboard. Your team is able to see all of these very quickly, and therefore remediate them quickly. And also, there's data that you can glean off of the dashboard, right? And use that to generate your reports that then go into your audits. So kind of solves three different challenges at scale and with a single store. Well, how do we do it at Chef, and what is it that we say, right? So in terms of how we envision it. So balancing security with growing infrastructure needs typically implies IT security and compliance are non-negotiable, right? And, for far too long, this trade-off between risk and the organization's ability to deliver market-ready solutions, right? Basically, the time to market, and has been one that has caused compliance to suffer a bit, right? We're more interested in getting products out of market. Compliance mostly is an afterthought. And Chef Desktop, which is our endpoint compliance, if you will, offering, helps in 4 stages, right? So how do we do this? So one is an acquisition itself. So customers can gain access to trusted content that is aligned with security and industry benchmarks for auditing and remediation. And you can get started quickly with extensively tested, chef curated, CIS certified content that ensures remediation actions are directly aligned with the kind of audit results that you have in mind. It makes it simple to define compliance baselines and tailor them to specific needs of the organization. You can constantly monitor and assess your compliance stance by detecting deviations from the envisioned state, and do this at any point in the deployment lifecycle. You can, of course, remediate any fixes in infrastructure. You can do that quickly, and of course, you can gain access to visibility across your estate, and do so on a real-time basis, right? So, Chef Desktop really enables you to do all of this very easily and at scale. I won't go through a lot of this in detail, but what you see are essentially the benefits of all of this, right? So you're able to manage endpoint compliance as code. That helps you with dealing with all of these at scale. It enables organizations to manage and scale these compliance requirements. So given that everything is code, if there's a change in the standard that you need to adhere to, you can just make those changes in code and deploy it very quickly. It's simplified automation, right? At the end of the day, you have all of this in code that's reviewable, that's auditable, and it's simple, right? And of course, as a result of all of that, it's easier to audit, and it reduces auditing costs as well, right? So that's a little bit in terms of a quick summary of what we see as compliance as code and what the benefits are. But Chaitra will cover a lot more about what you can do with desktop, Chef Desktop in some more detail. But before that, you'll see a few poll questions pop up. The first one should be coming up right now. Please take the time to respond to those questions, and we'll try and discuss a little bit of those answers towards the end of this webinar. With that, I'll hand it off to Chaitra to take us through the next section. Chaitra.
Thanks, Sudeep. Okay. So like Sudeep mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, so we are doing a user research to get some insight into the endpoint management space. So if you have experience managing laptops and desktops, please feel free to block some time on our calendars. We'd love to speak to you and learn about your experience managing endpoints. The bookings link is posted in the chat below. So please feel free to schedule the call. So talking about why do IT teams need to worry about endpoint compliance, right? Why do you need to ensure compliance of employee laptops or desktops? So customers today not only insist on configurations and security standards applied on endpoints, but they also want to know if the configurations and security patches applied are actually applied correctly on the fleet. So security has considerably changed over the years. There are different kinds of standards, requirements that organizations need to adhere to. It may be global standards, requirements that like legal requirements, HIPAA, CIS, legal standards, and sometimes standards set by some customers. So it is important that organizations provide that kind of transparency to the customers about the compliance state of the fleet. Hence, IT teams are no more just responsible for configuring end user laptops, but are also becoming increasingly responsible for compliance and security aspects as well. Like, so the need for security and compliance is non-negotiable, right? But in many cases, steps to ensure compliance causes impediments in the ability to deliver with speed, because traditionally security reviews have been more of an afterthought and were typically done at the end of a long delivery process, when a slippage and delays put the security review under tremendous pressure and to happen so that it does not impede the delivery of any changes that need to be rolled out. And security reviews are typically manual, and they often slow down the delivery process. And these reviews rely on scanning tools that generate too much data to effectively manage at one go. And they catch problems too late in the development lifecycle to economically fix them at the right time. And also, finally, they don't really manage exceptions appropriately. So security reviews take away the valuable productive time teams have to work on projects of business value or work on innovative aspects. Instead, they have to concentrate on manual and many times cumbersome audit processes, right? And even when done appropriately for a large fleet of laptops or desktops, the current security and compliance process provide limited visibility and hinder team collaboration, which in many cases can cause undue risk for the organization. So let's talk about some of the pain points that IT admins face in ensuring fleet compliance. One is a lack of visibility, right? So getting a comprehensive view of the state of a large fleet for a large amount of compliance data gathered is a challenge. And as organizations grow, fleet scales. And add to it the challenges of remote working, where we have machines in different networks and geographic locations. Irrespective of the location or network, the machines need to adhere to compliance standards. And there are multiple tools today being used for ensuring compliance. There are a number of scanning tools and remote monitoring tools being used in organizations to monitor and fix issues. But collating data from all of these different tools and taking appropriate actions is not an easy task to do. And even when non-compliant devices are identified, the remediation process is pretty manual. There may be integration with ServiceNow or Jira where compliance issues or tickets are logged, and then the respective teams pick them up and fix them. Many times, teams responsible for security and compliance are different, right? So they follow separate processes and methods to evaluate compliance. The checklist or policies created by them may be difficult for IT teams to comprehend. In the DevOps world, including compliance and security as part of the development lifecycle is proving to be effective. So DevSecOps principles considers security and compliance reviews early in the cycle, which helps in ensuring security, and they also do not cause any delays in rolling out releases. So extending DevSecOps principles to managing endpoints could help solve some of the pain points that IT admins face today. So extending DevSecOps principles in the sense where your endpoint configurations are represented as code, and you also specify compliance standards that you want your fleet to adhere to as code. So you can achieve continuous compliance with code in 3 steps, right? The first one is to detect all non-compliant devices and visualize them in a dashboard, develop baselines to remediate automatically, whenever devices are out of compliance, and deploy these baselines to continuously detect and correct devices in the fleet. One can use configuration management tools like Chef for ensuring continuous compliance in endpoints. With Chef, you can essentially have a common language shared among your teams. The language is really the codification of security and compliance standards, which is readable for any stakeholder who needs to understand what's being codified in order to certify compliance. Managing security and compliance as code is the only way you'll enable your organization to have continuous compliance, right? So the benefit of managing compliance and security as code is that you have the ability to collaborate in a common language in human readable code. And then you can scale beyond a single system in a consistent, repeatable, and reliant way. Shift your security testing left from the far end of the process. And you also get the ability to continuously monitor the state of your security and compliance with dashboards. So one can drive security and compliance through code into a continuous compliance state where security is no longer a barrier, but in fact is an enabler of speed. Typically, this is what the Chef setup looks like for our customers. Chef desktop customers perform their core tasks like zero-touch enrollment, remote wiper lock with MDMs and UEMs. And these MDMs are also used for deploying Chef client onto the endpoints. And Chef is used for specifying configurations as code, performing compliance checks, and automatic drift management, and remediating non-compliant devices, right? So once you have the MDM installed Chef client on the endpoints, Chef takes over from there. And Chef client ensures that all configurations are applied correctly and ensure that devices are in the desired state. So you can achieve continuous compliance with a single tool chain and process. Talking a little bit more about how a Chef desktop setup looks like. All the code configurations are specified in the form of Chef artifacts called cookbooks, which has recipes defining different configurations, right? So these cookbooks are pushed to the source code management repository, which triggers a CI/CD pipeline. The cookbook is vetted, well vetted and tested before being pushed to the Chef desktop server. And the Chef client deployed on the machines pull these cookbooks and apply them onto the machines. So every time the cookbook is updated, it is tested and the latest changes are pulled by the Chef client onto the devices. So even if there are configuration drifts done manually by some user, the drifts are automatically corrected as Chef clients are, they can be scheduled to run periodically, and any change in configuration from the desired state is automatically fixed. So the state of your entire fleet, the compliance test results, and all the changes done on your fleet can be viewed on a visibility dashboard. You can use Chef to manage devices with different operating systems like Windows, Mac OS, and Linux devices. Now, let's talk about writing compliance tests as code with Chef. So you can write your own compliance tests, or you can use CIS benchmarks curated by Chef as part of premium content. And Chef provides both audit and remediation content as part of the premium content for different operating systems and different versions of operating systems. So you can use them as is, or you can customize them to meet your standards. What you see here is an example of a compliance audit profile, which tests whether or not FileVault is enabled in the device. If FileVault is not enabled, the test would fail, and you would be able to view the failure on the automation. So let me take you through what it looks like to perform compliance checks with Chef. So here is an example of a policy file. And if you want multiple recipes or cookbooks under a repository that we want to run on a group of nodes, then we define a policy file where we specify all cookbooks, recipes, and remediation cookbooks to be run. You can enable a compliance phase by setting the attribute to true, which means it would run the compliance tests. And then you can have your compliance audit profiles uploaded to the Automate dashboard. And the audit profiles are defined in the attributes file in the cookbook. So these audit profiles are part of the premium content, and we can download and use them as is, or you can even write your own compliance profiles. So the compliance scans can be scheduled to run at regular intervals, and you would see the results on the compliance page on the Automate dashboard. You can see all the past, failed, and total test runs. And the infrastructure dashboard on Automate also shows the cookbooks that were run on a node, and also give more specifics on all the individual resources or configurations that were run as well, so that you get a comprehensive picture of what are the configuration changes that happened on your fleet. You can find out which are the configurations that were applied successfully, which ones were not applied, and which ones failed, and what is the reason for failure, the error logs, and everything can be viewed on these visibility dashboards. So zooming in a little on the compliance test results on the dashboard, you can look at each individual test that ran on the node and see more details for each of the test runs. You can drill down further to view why a compliance test failed, right? So you can see here that the test failed because the file vault was turned off, but it was expected to be on. And then you can even look at the source code of the compliance test. So the benefits with compliance as code is that we get audit trail. Since Chef allows you to follow an SDLC process, all configurations are version controlled, and every configuration change made is audited. So you know who made a change, when it was made, and why it was made, and everything, right? And you also get flexibility. So once you write your compliance test, if the needs of the organization changes or if new regulations are put in place, they can easily be customized. Audit profiles can be scheduled to run on specific intervals, and hence you can be assured of continuous compliance with Chef. And Chef tools can be used to verify configuration management results. Since Chef client is scheduled to run at regular intervals, drifts are corrected automatically. And additionally, you can deploy remediation cookbooks to automatically remediate non-compliant devices. So before we move to the next, you'll see a poll question pop up. So do take the time to respond to this poll. We will discuss the results at the end of the webinar. So let's talk.
Chaitra, just 1 minute. I think it'll be great. I think there was a little bit of a challenge in displaying the first question as well. Maybe we could also, once you display the second question, could we maybe re-display the first one too? Thanks. Sorry, Chaitra, you should. Sure. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about where does Chef fit into desktop management, right? So Chef Desktop was a product that we launched early in 2020, and it essentially uses the same components and tools and technology that is used for managing and automating our server config management. So Chef has proven itself in the DevOps space from many years, and it is only logical that we extend Chef to managing endpoints as well. Even though the Chef Desktop product was officially launched early 2020, some of our customers have been using Chef to manage their endpoints as early as 2015. And they've been able to manage tens and thousands of machines with just a small team of 2 or 3 people. They were able to do this because they were representing their endpoint state as code and were automating most of their manual processes, which helped them manage a large fleet size at scale. So with Chef Desktop, you can drive efficiency through automation, right? So by automating mundane manual configuration tasks, you can reduce IT setup tickets and avoid mistakes. You can enable faster time to productivity for your employees, reduce downtime, and achieve quick system update management. And secondly, you can gain control over IT resources, right? So you can manage IT resources consistently across the enterprise. You can manage multiple operating systems using the same toolchain and processes. You can manage Windows, Mac, and Linux endpoints. And Chef really increases the efficiency of the team. You don't have to write multiple scripts to achieve a configuration for different operating systems. You can use a single cookbook to manage a large fleet with different operating systems with centralized visibility, independent of the OS used. And finally, you can reduce security and compliance risks by monitoring laptop and desktop fleet for compliance through CIS benchmarks provided by Chef, or by writing your own compliance profiles adhering to company standards or standards set by your customers. And since Chef lets you follow an SDLC process, all the changes are version controlled, and any and all changes can be audited through code. And you can achieve rapid IT resource hardening or remediation, whether it is for a single laptop or for the entire fleet. With Chef, you can automate desktop management via code, like I said before, that can be made a pipeline deliverable, and manage configuration through Chef curated content. So Chef provides a premium content cookbook as well, which has recipes for most common endpoint management use cases. And these recipes are available both with Ruby and YAML templates, right? And you can manage your company-wide fleet regardless of OS. Like I mentioned before, you can manage your Mac, Windows, and Linux fleet. And you can do when a laptop configuration drifts, and automatically correct any necessary misconfigurations. So once you have your Chef client deployed onto your endpoints, it can be scheduled to run at periodic intervals, and which pulls any cookbook or configuration changes from the server, and applies periodically to the fleet, ensuring that the devices always remain in the desired state. And you can have customized and extensible configuration controls to meet each of your organization's unique needs. So Chef Desktop has a visibility layer, which enables continuous visibility to the configuration status of the fleet. The visibility dashboard shows the status of all the devices, irrespective of whether it is Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can see how many laptops were checked in, how many did not. You can also view the check-in history and find out the status of your devices over a period of time. You can also further drill down and view device-specific attributes like client version, OS version, kernel version, and you can also view the status of the client runs, the failures, the error logs, the cookbooks deployed onto a node. And then you can also pre-group information, check on the top errors that happened during the client runs. And apart from this, you also have a compliance dashboard like we saw in the example a while ago. So Chef empowers IT resource managers through compliance. With Chef, you can consistently enforce security and company policies with Chef curated content, or by writing your own compliance profiles to meet your organizational needs. So you can continuously detect security or compliance issues and allow for automatic remediation. Finally, what does Chef bring on the plate, right? So why manage desktops with Chef? So you'll be able to do more with less resources, right? So we have seen our customers managing hundreds and thousands of laptops with just a small team, and you can end up with less tickets and avoid mistakes. With most of the process automated, there are just very few things that can go wrong, right? And you can achieve continuous compliance. You will not only be able to bring the fleet to the desired state, but you can continue to keep them in that state by proactively monitoring the fleet and correcting non-compliant devices. And all changes are tracked and auditable. Since all the changes that you do on the fleet are version control, you'll be able to track everything from who made what change, when the change was made, to what are the changes that occurred over a period of time. And finally, you will have a single process and tool chain for managing configuration and also ensuring compliance of your entire fleet. With this, we've come towards the end of the webinar. But before we go to the Q&A, you will see a poll question pop up. So please enter your responses to the poll question. So do we have any questions?
Let's just give folk a couple of minutes and we'll start picking those up.
Sure.
Right. So I think we have our first one. And the question is, can premium content be customized?
So yeah, that's a good question. So yes, you can customize premium compliance content to fit your needs or meet your organization's standard, if that's what you mean by customized. So Chef strength is that it is extremely flexible, right? Since everything is represented as code, it can be modified anytime based on changes in standards and regulations without incurring much overhead. And the intention of this premium content is, even with someone who's not familiar with Chef, you can quickly get started with ensuring compliance state for your fleet. So you can quickly deploy the premium content as is, but you're also free to customize them if you want to meet any specific standards that your organization demands.
Right, and this is again benchmark to CIS standards, right?
Yeah, right. So, let me reiterate: the premium content curated by Chef for compliance is they adhere to CIS benchmark standards. Yeah, and it's available for different operating systems and different versions of your operating systems.
Sure. The next one is compliance premium content part of Chef desktop licenses? This is a good one.
Yeah, so Chef desktop comes in two SKUs. One is the Chef desktop manage, and the other is Chef desktop compliance, right? So with Chef desktop manage, you get only a premium content cookbook, which has recipes for configuring most common endpoint management use cases. But with the Chef desktop compliance SKU, along with the premium content cookbook, you're also entitled to premium compliance content, which include audit as well as remediation content for Windows, Mac, and Linux. These compliance profiles adhere to CIS benchmarks, like I said before, and they can be customized or tweaked to meet your organization needs.
Great. So there's another one, and this is a pretty interesting question as well. So can Chef, can we actually manage our endpoints through our existing Chef infra and automate server platforms that we use for non-desktop nodes? So in other words, can we use our existing Chef infra, deployment or automate server platform? Can we use that to also manage desktops while they currently are using it, I think, to manage non-desktop nodes?
Yeah, so they can be managed they can be used for managing desktops, but if you have a Chef desktop license, you'll also get the premium content cookbook and any new features that Chef desktop team would be developing over the time. So the premium content cookbook comes only with the desktop license.
Right. So 2 points to this. One is, hey, it's premium content that you get, and two, the way the product is designed itself is very amenable to a desktop use case or a kiosk or a laptop use case. I think that's probably the answer to, in terms of just the bullet points, right? So great, thanks, Chaitra. The next one is, are there different premium content cookbooks for different platforms that are available?
Yeah, so in case of compliance premium content, right, you have different profiles for different operating systems and for different versions of your operating system, which you need to download to use them. But in case of the premium content cookbook, there's a single cookbook which is provided by Chef, and it has recipes for both Mac and Windows, and you can add more resources in those recipes to add more use cases. So Chef is basically Ruby underneath, and we have a wide range of code abstractions built on top of it for different configurations. They're easy to use, and you can just pass a few parameters to the resources, and Chef will figure out how to perform the configuration and all the underlying commands that need to be done. So to answer the question, yeah, you can use a single cookbook. Premium content cookbook provided by Chef is a single cookbook, and you can continue to use that single cookbook where you can just keep on adding more use cases and resources if you need to add them.
Great. We've got one question from Tayyab, and I think the question is broadly, hey, how does desktop automate non-compliance drift under the hood? Tayyab, it'll be great if you can, elaborate a little bit about that question, help us to answer it a little better. But I think Chaitra very briefly said that, it's a lot of Ruby on Rails and DSL, essentially under the hood, with some scripting that you can also do. But if you can give us a little more, if you could elaborate a little more on that question, it'll help us answer that question better, right? So I'll stop at that, and please continue to enter your questions into the interface, and we'll be happy to respond to them. So while we're waiting for more questions, let's look at the polls, right? And how that is kind of, what is it that we're looking at, right? So the first one was, what are the biggest challenges with ensuring endpoint compliance? I think the biggest one is, hey, manual remediation. A lot of this is manual. It happens. I'm guessing, I'm just reading a little bit more than what was put up there. These are fairly repetitive audits. They need to happen at scale, and they're of course difficult to do. There's also another case where, and this was someone that provided more context to us, I think, in terms of what they were facing. And I think the broad strokes was, hey, we still are able to get a lot of this done on SECM, but that's only for point reports and only for Windows systems. But there are a whole bunch of other systems that we really have a problem getting visibility to. And yes, and you've asked, hey, I guess that would be 99% of people in this scenario. That's true. We see a significant number of people having this challenge. So you're not too far off, right? So just that, right? So but Chaitra, did you want to add? It's manual, and of course the visibility is not really across the estate. It's just in parts of the entire estate.
So yeah, although there are a lot of third-party tools and MDMs being used for monitoring compliance, there are still shortcomings with them, since most of them are like GUI-based tools, and everything has to be configured manually, right? And different configurations could be riddled behind menus and options, making the entire process of setting up compliance tedious and also error-prone, right? Since it's all UI point and click, it could lead to like unintended consequences. And coming to the remediation being manual, right? So remediation is manual in many organizations, like you could have integrations with Jira or ServiceNow where tickets are created whenever there's a non-compliant machine, but these tickets get assigned to appropriate teams who take corrective action. But with Chef, you can deploy remediation cookbooks to fix non-compliant devices. To answer the question that was asked as well on how Chef automatically corrects the drifts. So Chef client can be Chef client is can be deployed onto each and every machine on your fleet, and it can be scheduled to run periodically. So every time it runs, it checks in with the Chef server, and it pulls in any changes in the cookbooks, or if any configurations in the machine is changed by a user. It pulls the cookbooks again and applies onto the machine, and it brings the devices back to the desired state, performing automatic drift correction and remediation. So you don't have to manually go and fix any non-compliant devices if an employee manages to change any configurations.
Great, and I realized that we didn't get more context to that question, but I do hope we've answered that in terms of what you meant. Also, could we have maybe the next the answer to the next poll question, please? Do you write scripts for maintaining endpoint fleet compliance? Sometimes, rarely, no. This is definitely interesting in that we've seen a lot of people do this more frequently than sometimes. But and of course there are multiple issues, right? So scripts being agnostic are not really agnostic across operating systems. They're difficult to maintain. Typically, the person that writes the script understands its logic, and when that person leaves the organization, there's that tribal knowledge that's lost as
Yep.
well. But I think those are the broad ones. But Chaitra,
Yeah.
any observations around this?
Right. So with scripting, you need to have team members with different skill sets, right? So you need people with Bash scripting skills for Mac, and then you have to write separate PowerShell scripts for Windows devices. So, but with Chef, you can use a single cookbook and use the same skill set, where you have to use Ruby abstractions. And scripts can get very complex and lengthy for certain use cases, right? So, like Sudeep mentioned, if the person writing the scripts is on a vacation or if he leaves the company, the rest of the team could struggle to find out what the script does. And in case of issues, debugging the scripts may get very hard and cumbersome. But with Chef, you can follow a SDLC process, get version control, test your changes before deploying to production. And Chef is also very self-documenting, right? So every configuration need not be documented like it is with the script. Even a new member joining the team can easily read the recipes to figure out what is the configuration being done. And it applies the same even for the compliance tests. It's readable, and any stakeholder in the organization can just go look at the compliance test, and he knows what are the compliance tests, or what are the what does the report have.
Great. We did not receive any other questions, but this has been fairly interactive. But as I say that, I will reiterate the fact that the product team, some of us that are here on this call as well, would be very interested. And this is not really a sales call, right? And I want to call that out up front. We really do want to understand your use cases. We want to understand how you would use endpoint management software over and above an MDM as an automation, as a means of automating your endpoints, and of course, keeping them in compliance. And we'll drop that link again within the chat interface. It'll be great if you could spend maybe 30 minutes of your time, just to discuss how you're using this or any other software. It could be SCCM, it could be any of the others, in terms of just what the use case is. And it'll also be great if you can, before you do block that time up, just tell us a little bit about yourself, in terms of, hey, what do you do in your company, and what are your responsibilities like, and we'll make it worth the time, right? We'll definitely make it worth your time, and that is a promise. With that said, again, one last time, that link is in your chat interface for you to go and book some time with us. With that said, I think those were the questions that we had. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and I'll hand it off to Raisa.
Thank you, Sudeep. Thank you, Chaitra. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar today. If you like what you saw, we encourage you to share the presentation with your teammates and professional network. The on-demand version of the same should be available soon, and we will email it to you as soon as it's ready. You will be able to access it using the same audience link that you're using now. So with that, thank you everyone again, and have a good day. Bye.